The following is a transcription of an audio recording that was released on the dark web. It details the events of June 26, 1992, in Golovin, Alaska. It is up for the reader to determine whether or not this is authentic, but be warned, it entails information that should have never been released to the general public. With that said, this may be the only written copy of the atrocious events that had transpired. This is Dr. Monty, psychiatrist for the United States military. It is 0400, and I will be interviewing the sole surviving member of TRO Squad, Private Stoltz, about their failed search and recovery operation. Let the interview commence now. Now then, are you ready to tell us what had occurred over the course of your mission, Private Stoltz? The stern, cold-faced doctor asked from across the steel table. He had a yellow notepad and pen he twirled around impatiently. He grunted, irritated at the lack of response from the battered Stoltz. Private Stoltz, perhaps I was not clear with what I was saying. The doctor tapped his pen onto the table. You are to tell me what happened to you and your unfortunate squad mates, as well as provide any and all important details that will better help the U.S. government discover what went wrong. Otherwise, he took a sip of water and cleared his throat. Otherwise, you will be summarily executed, or at the very least, jailed for life. Now, do we understand each other? The doctor cocked his head and smiled sarcastically at the mentally broken young man in front of him. Private Stoltz's hands twitched at the barbed words. Stoltz looked at the doctor with sunken and swollen eyes. He had cried uncontrollably just minutes prior to the meeting. Scratch that. This interrogation. Fine, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Just don't harass me, alright? I've seen things that would make you think God was dead. Stoltz muttered through gritted teeth. Surprisingly, his response just elicited a chuckle from the stoic doctor. Indulge me, son. Tell me what happened, from the beginning. No pressure, of course. The only thing at stake is your life, after all. Stoltz ignored the comment and began his story. Corporal Cinder, Sergeant Vibe, and I were selected from our squad for a search and recovery mission in the middle of nowhere, Alaska, at some research facility. The top brass told us the facility hadn't responded to any emails or calls in the past 2 weeks, for some unknown reason. They only sent the 3 of us into that godforsaken facility. I should have known then and there this was no run-of-the-mill operation. Stoltz bit his lips and looked down at his hands that were stained crimson. Go on now. We just started. Don't go silent on me now, son. Stoltz narrowed his eyes as the condescending scumbag in front of him. What's your name, Doc? I don't get paid to exchange pleasantries. I get paid to analyze poor saps like you, so talk. The doctor adjusted his glasses and exhaled a sharp breath of air. Stoltz gulped down some water like it was gin before continuing. Alright, have it your way. Cinder, Bob and I were tasked with recovering the files of a unique specimen that the lab codes were working on. We were not told exactly what was being experimented on, just to acquire the files and to find out what happened to the scientist. Each of us was given a layout of the facility and all the necessary key cards that would allow us access to the restricted areas. That was all we were given, and all the information that was relayed to us. Bive wasn't stupid, however. He knew that we were deemed non-essential from the start. 3 men to scour a research facility, not even told about what we were looking for. We were marked for death from the beginning. The doctor wrote down some notes and nodded. Go on, Private Stoltz. So, figuring that we would most likely be brutally murdered, he made sure we'd have enough weapons to take down a small town. Anyway, they airdropped us approximately 1,000 meters away from the gated entry point of the facility. Cinder took out his binoculars to scope out the perimeter and immediately told us to be on guard. The map dictated that there were to be 2 guards at the gate of the facility, and from what we could tell, No one was around. Bive told Cinder to keep a lookout from where we were, in case something or someone was lurking around, while he and I were to walk around the perimeter to see if we could find forced points of entry or bodies. Monty put a hand up, gesturing for Stoltz to pause so he could make a few more notes. Sounds like the stereotypical something is off situation you boys had going on there, huh? No kidding, but that was the least of our troubles. Anyway, Bive and I went around the compound, and we weren't able to find any forced points of entry. But we did find something. Uncanny to say the least. Monty could have sworn that he saw Stoltz smile before covering up his mouth. I see. Well, what exactly did you find? A limp body? A corpse? No offense, young man, but this is more of a footnote than anything else. There was a tentacle with eyes wriggling out of its mouth. Stoltz interrupted, angrily slamming his fist down. An officer dressed in black stepped forward, out of the shadows, and trained his gun on the back of Stoltz's head. Now, Mr. Stoltz, let us relax. Tell me, what exactly happened to the poor chap and the tentacle? Monty pointed at the officer and told him to stand down. Please, continue, Stoltz. You're finally giving us something noteworthy. The good doctor sat up in his chair, pen at the ready, while Stoltz stared him down. Fine. At the rear of the perimeter, we found one of the security guards slumped against a concrete wall. Bive and I pulled out our Glocks, just in case he was mad or something. But none of that happened. Instead, as we got closer, we both saw the squirming tentacle flailing about from his mouth. It was disgusting, to say the least. But what was even more terrifying was that it stopped moving when it noticed us, and those eyes, those disgusting eyes, stared at us, unblinking and completely focused. Those eyes were like staring into the inky blackness of space, empty and devoid of humanity. Upon closer inspection, we saw that the guard's face was covered in boils and sores, and at that point Bive had seen enough. He emptied an entire clip into that guy's head, handed to the blasphemous tentacle. Stoltz stopped speaking, apparently pausing for questions. And what of the other guard? Never found the poor guy. I can guess what happened to him, though. Allow me to fast forward a bit to explain. Monty made sure to quickly note that Stoltz's demeanor suddenly shifted to be more upbeat in a sinister way. It was as though he was horrified recounting his experience, but it seemed to be excited for some arcane reason. Cinder, Bive, and I made our way with that incident to the foyer of the facility. However, the place had been utterly trashed. Papers, trash, and pools of blood littered the place. That wasn't what agitated us, though. I don't know how many times I've entered places like that. What agitated us was covering the tiled floors and the walls. What covered the walls, Stoltz? More blood? A liquid of an unknown substance? Coral and bodies. The stench of flesh and the ocean filled the air. Stoltz replied before entering a coughing fit. Are you all right? You're looking a bit green. Monty picked up the trash can from the corner of the room and placed it next to Stoltz. Stoltz shook his head and drank the rest of the water. I'm fine. Just a bit dehydrated. Can I get some more water? Monty ordered the officer in the room to get a few bottles of water and returned promptly. Stoltz quickly downed 2 of the 5 bottles before his normal complexion returned. Thank you. As I was saying, the walls were covered in coral of various colors. And as for the bodies, several scientists and security guards were stuck to the walls as the coral ran rampant over their bodies, like it was consuming them. Their carcasses were decaying. Confusingly enough, their flesh and bones were in the process of transmogrification into coral. Even their organs and other viscera that were spilled out of their body had coral attacking them. And just like the guards outside, tentacles with eyes were flailing erratically from their mouths. That is, of course, until they noticed us. They were like silent sentinels, unmoving and glaring at us. Cinder wanted to burn them then and there, but Bive ordered us just to keep moving. We had a job to do, and he didn't want us to expend any extra effort. Plus, burning the place down was not part of the operation. Stoltz paused again to cough violently. He gulped down 2 more water bottles and wiped his mouth sloppily. Stoltz? Are you ill? Monty asked, finally showing some genuine concern. I'm fine. I just think I'm finally coming to terms with what happened, and I guess I sustained some internal injuries. I'll be fine. It was clear that Stoltz was lying, but that didn't worry Monty. He just wanted to make sure that Stoltz told him all the information he needed before expiring. If you say so, please continue then. Once we passed through the foyer, all the lights were down, so we had to resort to our flashlights to get through the hallways. The room that we were looking for was on the complete other side of the facility, so we silently trudged along, noticing that the floor was covered in a shallow layer of water and algae. We were making good progress at a steady pace until Bob put his fist up, halting Cinder and I. He said that he could make out the outline of something at the end of the hallway, just outside the mark room that contained the files we were after. He then motioned for us to take up combat position behind him as he stepped cautiously forward. As he got closer, he noticed that it was a human male hunched over, naked and covered in a thin layer of green slime. Bob asked him if he was one of the scientists or guards, or even human. Bob didn't stand a chance at all. Stoltz hung his head low and fell silent, muttering something over and over again, appearing to have lost his composure. Monty waited a moment before snapping his fingers near Stoltz's head, and when he didn't respond to that, ordered the officer to shake him. The officer had only touched Stoltz's shoulder for a second before he let out an inhuman screech. Get a hold of yourself, Stoltz, Monty shouted to no avail. The officer was able to react, however, and slammed the butt of his gun against the side of Stoltz's head, knocking him out cold. Richardson, he'd better wake up quickly, or the boys at the top will make us disappear. Fortunately, Stoltz awoke with a start, gasping for air. He then eyed the trash can next to him and vomited up the water he had just drank. Welcome back to the world of the living, Mr. Stoltz. Finally, get all the trauma out of your system? Good. Now, get back to the story. I swear, if you freak out one more time, you will be shot. Not killed, but shot. And after all, you were correct. You and your squad were, and still are, expendable. Now get on with it, Monty demanded. Stoltz wiped his mouth with his sleeve and spat into the trash can a few times. I get it. I think my injuries are getting to me now, but I feel much more refreshed after that. I won't freak out again, I swear. Monty looked at Stoltz with trepidation and made a note to have Stoltz's body examined after the interview, preferably dead. Wonderful. Now get on with it, Monty said with a fake smile plastered on his face. Bive, he ordered the guy to turn around, slowly, with his hands up. But from where I was standing, I could tell that the guy was twitching violently. But he didn't turn around. Bive then said if he didn't follow his order, he'd shoot him down. And then the thing spoke up. It said,
Salvation is given to those with willing mouths.
Bive foolishly paused to ponder those words, and that's what cost him his life. The creature turned around, shrieked with a mouth so wide that it easily could have swallowed a small child whole. Not only that, Doctor, but its head began to shift and crack until the skull elongated and the eyes became bulbous, nearly the size of baseballs if I had to guess. What I saw next made me abandon faith in a higher power. 3 large black tendrils shot out of its chest and pierced Bive's neck, sternum, and stomach. He pulled the trigger on his gun, shooting bullets in every direction except for the creature. Monty was frantically writing down what was being relayed to him, and was completely enraptured with this information. And what did you and Cinder do? We wanted to fire at the creature, but we would have riddled Bive with bullets if we tried, so we just froze and watched. We just watched as the tendrils pulsed and pumped something into his body. After filling Bive with God knows what, it retracted the tendrils, and Bive dropped to the ground. Moments later, Bive's body seized up, and his back arched upward as an enormous-eyed tentacle burst out of his mouth, nearly splitting his head in two. Then the thing laughed, or I assumed it did. It let out a deep guttural rhythmic cry from its throat. Stoltz paused, putting his hand over his mouth. Stoltz, what happened next? Cinder and I emptied our clips at the thing, but it collapsed into itself, like it was made out of jelly. It was unbelievable. The entire body shrank down to the ground and slithered towards Cinder. Our bullets did nothing. Didn't even slow the abomination down. And it launched itself into Cinder's mouth. I was stunned. I even dropped my gun. I could see Cinder's eyes as he realized he was going to die. And die he did. That thing, once it fully entered Cinder's body, it reassumed physical form, and Cinder's body burst like a balloon. Stoltz chuckled at the memory. What's so funny, Stoltz? Tell me, Doc, have you ever seen someone just explode? It was like a rain shower of blood, entrails, and bones. My squad mate, my friend's inwards and brain matter covered me as this beast smiled at me like it was happy. That was my cue to get out. But just my luck, it was blocking the exit. So I didn't have any other choice but to run toward the marked room and hope that it could lock. I sprinted down the hallway, nearly slipping at several points, but I made it. I opened the door and slammed it shut behind me without looking back. To my surprise, the creature didn't make any attempts to break down the door, as I couldn't hear anything on the other side. Although, I wish I had just taken my chances with the creature instead of going in there. Why is that, Stoltz? Monty asked apprehensively. I entered the nest and found I think the queen to whatever that drone was, and even those tentacles. It was seated upon a throne of coral, and the corpses of the facility's long-dead scientists. It was easily more than 10 feet tall, and stared down at me with nothing but malice. Its head was like that of a hammerhead, 2 enormous black eyes that hung off the side of its head. It had a mouth that was permanently agape and filled with thousands of needle-like teeth. The rest of its body was extremely gaunt and sinewy, with tentacles that swirled about from its open chest. It had webbed hands and feet, and its skin was translucent, so I could see its bones, brains, and other organs that didn't make any anatomical sense. It was like a combination of a shark, an octopus, and a human, a complete affront of nature itself. Monty was completely fascinated with what he was hearing. I have 2 questions now, Stoltz. How did you escape from that dreadful place? And did you recover any of the files? Stoltz shrugged his shoulders. No, I wasn't able to recover any of the files on whatever they were making in that place. And as for my escape, I don't know that myself. All I remember was pulling out 2 pistols and screaming obscenities at that thing as I fired at it. Once my guns were empty of bullets, I saw that the bullets slowly oozed back out of its body. I grabbed a shotgun that was strapped to my back, but it was already too late. The swirling massive tentacles shot out at me and wrapped around my arms and legs. I thought it was going to eat me, but it took 2 tentacles and attached them to both sides of my throat. I felt the tendrils pierce my skin, and I passed out. I found myself outside the facility after that, and I called for extraction. That's everything. Stoltz finished and downed the rest of his water. Thank you for all that. It was very informative, Mr. Stoltz. Don't worry. With this, you just saved your life. And what the? Monty could be heard jumping out of his chair as a colossal tentacle wormed its way out of Stoltz's mouth.
Salvation is given to those with willing mouths.
Stoltz screamed in a voice not his own. What happened next was something I wish I had never had the chance to hear. Monty ordered the officer to shoot Stoltz, and the thing that popped out of his mouth. Gunshots could be heard ringing out in the small room, but were cut short by a gurgling. Monty could then be heard begging for mercy, and for divine intervention of any sort to save him from what he saw in front of him. His cry fell on deaf ears as maniacal laughing filled the room. Monty begged and begged for the creature to stay back, noting that Stoltz too was now dead. His cries were replaced by muffled shrieking. I'd wager that whatever had exited Stoltz's body was now forcing its way down Monty's throat. Monty was then heard banging on the door, trying to be let out of the room, but someone on the other side had locked him in. The tape then ends with Monty finally quieting down to a whimper as an unknown voice speaks.
Salvation has been granted to you both.
And then the tape cuts out. I guess that was all the story, but I was wrong. A couple days ago, on the news, some fishermen found some peculiar oddities with their most recent catch off the coast of Japan. They said the fish they caught were infected with some parasites. They found coral stuck to their bodies and small slimy tentacles that filled their intestines, with one large one out of their mouths. Scientists are calling it the tea plague and have begun experimenting on it. I now fear this recording has some authenticity to it. Regardless of the fact that this recording and the tea plague are connected, I don't know. But I've gone to great lengths to not eat seafood of any kind and to thoroughly inspect all my meals. I, for one, am not taking any chances with this. I almost forgot one last bit of information for you readers, and it's vitally important that you should know it.
Salvation is given to those with willing mouths.